Hi Yoel, really enjoy your videos. Currently halfway through my private pilot training with hopes for check ride sometime late summer. One thing I seem to be struggling with are climbs and descents in slow flight. I can maintain perfect slow flight in straight and level and even during turns, but lose my touch when attempting a climb and or a descent. Wow, so popular. So popular. I'm sure many of you out there could relate to this one. Let's see. Your explanations of things always resonate with me, and so I figured it wouldn't hurt to ask you to discuss this on one of your Ask Yoel series videos. And for those of you who don't know, Ask Yoel series is basically this right here. It's people emailing their questions or topics, whatever it is they want me to talk about or cover, and then I go ahead and talk about them. I haven't yet gotten through all of them, kind of difficult finding the time, but I do try and pick out the ones that I feel that most of you could relate to, and then I discuss them, such as this slow flight one. Obviously, the goal would be to cover all of them. We'll see what happens in the future. But that's, if you're curious what Ask Yoel series means, that's pretty much this right here. And then that's it. Thanks, Dave. Okay, Dave. So popular, common, so flippin' common, this issue when it comes to slow flight. How many of you out there watching this video could pull off perfect slow flight when you're just going straight and level? And then when your CFI says, hey, show me a climb to 5,500 feet or 6,000 feet, all of a sudden, things kind of fall apart. And this is very common. Now, I'll start with why it's so common, in my opinion, having seen so many students struggle with this one. And then I'll walk into what are some things I think you could do, and what are some mindset ways you should think of slow flight climbs and descents, which will make them a lot easier, if not like close to perfect, because they're not difficult. In a moment, you'll understand the reason people struggle with this is not because it's a difficult thing, but because they don't fully understand the mechanics that go into climbing an airplane with a heck ton of drag in slow flight while maintaining their constant airspeed. If you understand the mechanics, all of a sudden you'll realize, whoa, this is not bad at all. So, little sip of the coffee and then we'll jump right into it. Oh man, coffee is so good. Okay. Why do I think so many people struggle with this one? Why it's common? As with so many other things in flying, and I'll give one example here, but honestly, it's a topic for a whole other video. And that is something I commonly talk about, which is recovery from slow flight. So if you've been flight training for a while and you've gotten into stalls, I'm sorry, not slow flight, recovery from power off stalls. My bad. If you've been flying for a while and you've gotten into stalls with your instructor and you've been working on recovery from power off stalls, what I find again and again, I call this one of the biggest anomalies in flight training. And that is the inability of students to connect the dots and understand that a recovery from a power off stall is literally a go around. Okay, I'll say that again. A recovery from power off stall, and this is a video for a whole other time. I won't get deep into it, but I just want to bring an example from a different place in flight training to kind of make my point here with slow flight. A recovery from a power off stall is a go around. How do you execute a go around? Full power. Okay, again, let's assume we're in a Cessna 172 or whatever it might be. Full power. You bring the flaps up one notch, and then as the airplane typically climbs and accelerates through the flap retraction speed, you bring the flaps up and then you continue climbing out at VY. That's generally the go-around procedure on most general aviation airplanes. What's the procedure or what's the recovery from a power-off stall? It's the same thing. But we find again and again and again that when a student is asked to recover from a power off stall, all of a sudden it's a whole thing. They might do the flaps first, and they don't own the fact that the same exact movements with your hands and the same everything really should match all the stuff you do on a typical go-around. How many of you right now watching this could execute a perfect go-around if I got into the plane with you? And then if I asked you to show me a power-off stall to a full recovery, your recovery might be questionable. Well, if it's the exact same thing, it's a very interesting thing to kind of look into and study and figure out why people struggle with this. So obviously I have some theories. When you go around, you didn't just stall a second before that. So you're typically maybe a little calmer than you would be if you just went through a stall. And especially if you're just starting out, stalls could be intimidating and it could kind of cause people to freeze. I get it. But what I found is the more students understand and make this connection in their head that the recovery from a power off stall is a go around, the simpler everything becomes and their execution of that recovery is great. So this is not the video for that topic. I'll do a whole other video on that topic. But the reason I bring that up is because there's different things in flight training where we know how to do something. Not only we know how to do something, we do it a lot. And yet when it comes to applying that same exact concept, that same exact execution in a different area, we get lost. And we get lost because we're not used to doing that thing we do great and we do well in this new realm. Okay, so the example I brought, we do go-arounds with no problem, right? But then when we ask someone to do a go-around following a power-off stall, they get flustered, right? And that's pretty much what we call the power-off stall recovery. So the question here from Dave is, why does he get thrown off when he's asked to climb or descend in slow flight? So the reason I bring all this up, the reason I spent 3-4 minutes now talking about power off stalls and go arounds, is because there's something we do in flying. In fact, we do it every single flight, way more often than we do go arounds. And that thing is constant airspeed climbs. Now, we don't do constant airspeed descents every time we fly. Typically, we descend at a given feet per minute or foot per minute rate. So that's something that we're less familiar with. But what we do every single flight is what we call a constant airspeed climb. So you might ask, well, when do we do that on every given flight? And the answer is every single time you take off in an airplane and maintain VY on your climb out, guess what you're doing? You're doing a constant airspeed climb. And you could do a constant airspeed climb at any airspeed. We happen to maintain VY most of the times on our climb after takeoff. Sometimes we maintain VX if there's an obstacle for us to clear. Other times we might lower the nose a bit and get into what's called a cruise climb for better airflow and some other benefits that it brings along with it. But nonetheless, we're typically maintaining a speed when we climb. So the reason I say all these things is when it comes to climbing in slow flight and descending, but I specifically want to talk about climbing and then we'll tie it in with descent. When it comes to climbing in slow flight, the reason people struggle with this one is because they haven't yet made the connection in their head that it's already a skill they not only have, but they do every single time they take off. They haven't made that connection. They view the climbing and slow flight as a whole new animal, as a whole new thing, because now it's associated with slow flight. And they kind of lose track. They lose the ability to recognize that this is a skill they've already done 30 times, 40 times, 100 times, and they're good at. How many of you out there could maintain perfect VY after takeoff? And when you're asked to climb in slow flight, it's not that great, right? So it's very interesting. It's a very interesting thing. And there's a lot of these examples when it comes to flying, because honestly, a lot of flying, I'd say the majority of flying, is a repeat of a skill you already know, just doing it in a different way, in a different context, with a different name. And sometimes these different names and contexts and circumstances, what it could do is it could cause us to think that we've never done this. It's a skill I don't know how to do. It confuses me. It's weird. And that works against us. So what I want to do in this video, thanks to Dave for his question. Great question, Dave, by the way. What I want to do in this video is I want to try and highlight and show you and explain to you how climbing and slow flight is exactly the same exact climb, the same exact maneuver, whatever you want to call it, as climbing after every single one of your takeoffs. It's the same thing. And if you could do that, you could climb in slow flight. So let's get into it. What does a constant airspeed climb mean? Well, just by the sound of it, by the name of it, a constant airspeed climb is a climb where we're climbing the airplane while maintaining a constant speed. Now let's think of a climb following a takeoff. What's our power doing on a typical takeoff when we climb out? Well, the power's full. Okay, so there's no variation in power when it comes to climbing after takeoff. So if there's no variation in power and my power is, let's call it constant for the sake of this conversation, it's constant, it's not moving. If my power is constant, and we just said a moment ago that every single time we climb out at VY, we're maintaining a constant indicated airspeed. So how do we do that? How do we maintain this constant speed if our power is just fixed? It's not moving, it's not varying, it's not changing. Well, we maintain the constant speed by varying our pitch, right? You move your yoke, again, very slightly, very minute, but you adjust your yoke, your pitch, to maintain that speed constant. And this sounds so simple, and it might be something you never thought of before because it's so simple and you do it so intuitively in the airplane. Like when you climb out after takeoff, the goal is for you to not be thinking about what you're doing as much as to just maintain that speed, right? Because otherwise your brain would be overloaded. But right now that we're not flying and we're in a setting where we could actually analyze this, well, how are we maintaining VY? We're moving our yoke. We're adjusting that pitch with our hand in order to maintain that speed. And how do we do it? Well, if we see the speed getting a little fast, creeping up on us, guess what we need to do? We need to pitch up a little bit, right? So we pull back on the yoke just a touch, bring that nose up, and then the plane starts losing that speed, right? So we pick up that pitch, we gain what's called rate of climb or altitude, and that speed comes down to VY. If on the other hand, our VY gets a little slow, we're pitched a little too high, a little too much, a little too steep. Intuitively, we reduce that back pressure on the yoke. We relieve that yoke, move it a little forward. The nose comes down, speed builds back up to VY. And this is what you do without even thinking about it, and not thinking about it in the plane is a great thing. It's a really good thing. I heard once, I forget the number, but there's an enormous amount of thoughts that we all have in our heads every single day. And if our brains would actually stop at every single one of those thoughts and spend time and devote the proper attention to every single one of that thought, we would get nothing done. We'd go crazy. We wouldn't be able to handle or process it all. So it's a good thing that our brain is not actively processing what it is our hands are doing in every single moment, as much as it's a good thing that we're just doing it. It's great for the airplane. But right now, to understand the mechanics, let's analyze it and let's think about it. So every time after we take off, our power is constant and we vary our pitch in order to maintain a constant indicated airspeed. commonly known as Vy. Again, sometimes it's Vx, other times it might be a faster speed, but nonetheless, it's an indicated airspeed that we typically maintain when we climb. Great. Let's go to slow flight. And let's think of what slow flight is. Well, in slow flight, the idea is to maintain a constant speed. So for the sake of this conversation, let's assume that we're flying a Cessna 172, and it's been quite a while since I've flown 172s, so if this number is off, forgive me, but it's a hypothetical. Let's say that the slow flight in a 172 is 50 knots, okay, indicated on the screen. So we're doing straight and level, and you're maintaining the heading that your instructor told you to maintain nicely, and everything's perfect. And then your instructor says, all right, Dave, show me a climb to 6,500 feet or whatever it is. And that's when you go, oh, here we go. I'm not sure how to do this, right? Or I did know how to do this, and you start getting freaked out because you're in slow flight. And you forget that a climb is a climb is a climb is a climb. I'll say it even more specific. A constant airspeed climb is a constant airspeed climb is a constant airspeed climb. When you climb in slow flight, you are maintaining your speed. In our case, for the sake of this discussion, it's 50 knots. So let's think about this. If you didn't know better and you just added power and pitched up, there's no thought process or planning behind it, what are the chances of you going past or higher than 50 knots? Quite high. Quite high. What are the chances of you pitching up too much and going under 50 knots? Quite high, right? So our goal here with slow flight is to maintain the 50 knots. So let's think about the normal takeoff. In the normal takeoff, our power is constant and our pitch varies to maintain whatever speed we want to climb out at. In slow flight, we should be doing the exact same thing. The only difference, rather than going full power when it comes to climbing those 500 feet or whatever your instructor told you, we go partial power or a little power. But that's not the point. It doesn't matter how much power you add, as what's important is that you keep that power that you added constant and you don't vary it. Now, sometimes you'll add a little power and you'll realize this is not enough to climb to 500 feet while maintaining my 50. Okay, add some more power. The point is, don't go full power because you'll get lost. You want to be very slow motion, and very methodical when it comes to your slow flight. Because in slow flight, it's literally like walking on the edge of a cliff. You want to be very careful as to what every step of yours is because you're so close to that cliff. Every single move of yours when it comes to power or pitch is highlighted and pronounced in slow flight, which is why you want to take it slow. But the point is, you want to add some power and then keep it there. Keep the power constant, just like you do on your climbs after takeoff. And how do you maintain the 50 knots? Well, once you add that power while flying straight and level, what will your speed do with the 50 knots? Okay, so again, we're back to flying straight and level, and we're maintaining 50 knots. We're in that Cessna. And now we want to climb to 6,500 feet. Just like I said, let's add some power. We add that power. What will happen if we do nothing with our yoke, with our pitch? What will the plane do? Specifically, what will our speed do? If you guessed that the speed will increase, you'd be right. We're flying straight, we're continuing to fly straight, and we added power. Guess what that results in? An increase in speed. But that's no good. We don't want that. We want to maintain our speed 50 knots. So what's the only thing we can do in order to add that power and yet not increase our airspeed? maintain our speed at 50. You got it. The only thing left for us to do, the only thing we can do on our part in order to increase that power and not fly faster than 50 knots is by lifting that nose up, pitching up with our yoke, with our hand, and gain altitude instead of gaining airspeed. I'll say it again. We want to gain altitude and not airspeed. That is the idea of climbing and slow flight. So if I add that power and I do nothing with my pitch, I will continue to fly level at a faster speed than 50 knots. I don't want to do that. So if I add power and keep it there, my only way to keep the speed at 50 is by pitching up. Guess what the pitching up will result in? It will result in a given rate of climb. Now you might ask, well, what rate of climb will it result in? And the answer is, I don't know, and it doesn't really matter. Who cares? How about 100 feet a minute? It doesn't matter. There's nowhere in the world that says that our climb rate in slow flight has to be a minimum of 500 feet a minute like IFR. 50 feet a minute, 100 feet a minute, 200 feet a minute, doesn't matter. In fact, my suggestion to you is don't go more than 300 feet a minute, because at that point you probably added too much power and now you're doing things a little too fast. And remember, in slow flight, everything should happen slow and methodical to give you time to set yourself up for success. Because if things are hitting you in the face too fast, the chances of your speed going up more than the allotted amount increases, and you don't want to put yourself in that situation. I'd say 200-300 feet a minute is the max climb rate or descent rate that you want to see on your VSI while climbing and descending in slow flight. So again, in slow flight, Dave, enter into a climb, add some power. And by doing this near plane, I can't tell you here how much power to add. You'll figure it out. Just don't go full power. Add some power and slowly start pitching up. Why are we pitching up? Answer, it's our only way to maintain our speed constant with an increase in our power, which we just increased. There's no other way for us to do that, to keep that speed constant, other than pitching up. So you add that power, and you still, just like 5 minutes ago, need to maintain your speed at 50, or whatever your slow flight speed is. Guess what? Your only way to do it is by pitching up. So you start pitching up. So now you might ask, well, Yoel, how much should I pitch up? Answer, pitch up and maintain whatever pitch is necessary to maintain 50 knots. Back to a normal takeoff. If I asked you, right, if you and I flew in a plane right now and you showed me a perfect VY climb, and then when we landed, I asked you, I said, well, what degrees of pitch do you need in order to maintain that VY climb? Like, what degrees of pitch did you actually pull off in the plane 10 minutes ago to show me that perfect VY climb? What would your answer be? Your answer would probably be, well, I don't know. I wasn't looking. I don't really care. The degrees of pitch is not of concern to me as much as I was looking at my airspeed and I maintained that speed constant. And that would be a great answer. That would be a phenomenal answer, and that's what we want to do. When you climb out in an airplane, I don't really care if I'm maintaining 5 degrees of pitch or 6 degrees of pitch or 4 degrees of pitch, because I'm not looking at it. I'm looking at my airspeed indicator, and I am moving my yoke. I'm adjusting my pitch in order to maintain whatever speed I want to maintain constant. Same thing with the slow flight. You might say, well, how much pitch do I need? I don't know. Whatever amount of pitch will maintain your 50 knots or your slow flight speed. And it might be different on different days. It might be different flying into a headwind or with a tailwind. It might be different doing it at different altitudes. No one cares about the pitch. The pitch is the least of our concerns. The technique and understanding the mechanisms and the mechanics that go into this and into any other constant airspeed climb, that's what we're looking for. And if you understand that, a constant airspeed climb could be done at any power setting, not just a full power setting. The idea, the exercise, the execution is the same. My power is constant. My yoke moves to maintain that speed constant. I either go more uphill or less uphill to make sure that I keep my speed where I want it. That's literally what it comes down to. And the moment I've seen students struggle with climbing in slow flight, the moment they make this connection that, oh, it's just like any other constant airspeed climb. The only difference is I'm not doing it at full power, right? And that might be the thing that throws them off because, I know how to maintain VY when my power is full, but how do you maintain a different speed when your power is not full? Let me give you a secret. The same exact way. Nothing changes. It's the same thing. So here's a little tip. For those of you out there who are struggling with this, like Dave, who wrote in, here's some recommendations I'd give you. And it's something I found helps a lot of people. Go out there and don't practice slow flight yet. What I want you to do is I want you to practice constant airspeed climbs and descents, but, and here's the catch, at partial power settings. I'll say it again. I want you to go out there and practice constant airspeed climbs and descents, again, where you're maintaining your indicated airspeed with your yoke, with your pitch, not at full power, but at partial power settings. So go out there and try it at 75% power, and then try it at 50% power. Heck, try the same speed at different power settings and see what that does to the difference in pitch that's needed, right? So play around with this. And the moment you get comfortable with the idea that the amount of power is less important than the power having to stay constant and my speed maintained constant with my pitch, that's the most important thing to get through your head. And the moment you understand that, then once you've developed that skill independently of slow flight, take it into slow flight and apply it into your slow flight climbs and descents. I highly suspect it will make a very big difference when it comes to your slow flight climbs and descents. As far as descending is concerned, it's the same exact thing backwards. You want to create what's called a reduction in power. Again, not idle. So if flying at 5,500 feet, you're at, 60% power in slow flight, you don't want to chop the power to idle and do what we just discussed. Again, slow flight, slow motion. Whatever the power you need in slow flight, you want to bring that power back some amount. What amount? I don't know. Figure it out in your plane. Whatever amount will result in about, like I said, 200 or 300 feet per minute descent when you adjust your yoke, your pitch. Once you bring that power back, keep it there. Don't adjust the power throughout your climbs and descents and slow flights. It just won't work. It'll mess everything up. Once you brought the power back, it's the same thing backwards. What will your speed do now? It will bleed off. Ooh, we don't want that happening. Guess what our only way of maintaining our speed constant is? By lowering the nose and going downhill. That's what we want. We want to create a given rate of descent. So this, my friends, is how we climb and descend in slow flight. I hope this video was helpful. I hope I was able to make that connection in your head that it's nothing more and nothing less than a constant airspeed climb, which, unlike a go-around that you might do every other session or every 5 sessions, every single flight you do a constant airspeed climb. You're probably good at it. Like, you're probably very proficient at it, right? Climbing out at VY and maintaining VY is one of the first things you figure out to do. It's not hard, right? You're kind of climbing away from the ground. It's not scary. It's good. You're good at it, right? You're probably good at it. But you just haven't made the connection that the same technique, the same mechanics exist in a slow flight climb and descent. The only difference is it's happening slower. I'm being more gentle with it, more careful. And my power, instead of being at full for climbs, And at idle for descent, my power is not full, it's partial. So the little tip I gave, go out there and do constant speed climbs at different partial power settings, I think will go a long way with you if you're someone who struggles with this. And I think I answered the question that Dave asked with this one. Dave, I hope this helps. If you have any other questions, feel free to email me back. Obviously, I'll discuss anything I can find the time to discuss. Happy I was able to fit this one in. And that's about that, Dave. So thanks for your question. I hope this was helpful to everyone. Get out there, fly safe, and remember, there's many, many things in flight training that you are already good at. You just happen to be doing them in settings that are different than the setting you're asked to do them now. So the more you can make that connection and realize, oh, the recovery from a power off stall is a go-around. Cool. The thing I need to do when I have an engine fire is pretty much a shutdown checklist. Like, oh, yeah, I do a shutdown checklist every single time I end my flight. Oh, the climb in the slow flight is a constant airspeed. Oh, yeah, I do a constant airspeed climb. The more connections you can make, the simpler this all becomes. None of this should be complicated. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Hey guys, it's Yoel. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it answered some of your questions, confusion, whatever it might be, that I was able to help you in your own flight training journey. If you did enjoy the video and you did find it helpful, I would appreciate if you would subscribe to the channel and like the video. What that does with the YouTube algorithm is it kind of lets the AI way of letting YouTube know that there's some interest here and there's some helpful information for others. And that way YouTube will share this with other students or people who are going through flight training just like you. So if you do those things, it always helps, and I do appreciate it. Secondly, if you also have a topic, a question, a topic, a concern, confusion, whatever it might be that you want me to talk about on these videos here, go ahead and email me. There's an email in the description of this video below. So if you click on the description of the video, you'll see an email. Email that email with your question or topic, whatever it is you want me to talk about. And in the subject line of the email, write Ask Yoel, because this series is what I call Ask Yoel. So that way when the emails come in, we're able to separate them and know that your email is a topic you want me to discuss on these videos. Anyhow, hope it was helpful, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care.